Allison, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my honor to get to hang out and chat with you today. Before I start grilling you with all the questions regarding programmatic SEO, I'll share my 15-second version of how I found you. So I've been in the blogging world and the SEO world for a long time, and I've always seen this word programmatic attached to SEO, and I shy away from it. I'm like, I don't want to learn something new. I kind of get a sense of what this is, but it's not really clear in my head. Like, I don't have time for this. Well, fast forward till maybe like a month or so ago, maybe like 2 months ago. I was like, I'm actually interested in this. I should probably learn what it is specifically. And I think I tweeted something out like, who should I follow for this? Or who should I look to learn what programmatic SEO is? And your name came up multiple times. And in fact, your app, which I fully want to give you permission to promote like all day long, pagefactory.app, it came up as well. So that's how I found Allison. I want to let everybody know that. Allison, why don't you take over and tell us just your brief backstory and how you got involved in this world of content, SEO, programmatic SEO, and that stuff. Like, what was your background in, and how did you get to like right now?
Yeah. So it's kind of a funny story. My background is originally in software engineering. So I was building stuff for the internet, trying to promote it, not very successful at that. I had one project called Fantasy Congress, which was like fantasy sports, but for US politics.
Politics?
Very
Ooh.
silly.
Spicy.
Very silly. Yeah, very nerdy. And I wanted to promote it, and I couldn't really figure out how to make SEO work for it. And that's kind of how I stumbled on programmatic SEO originally, because I had all of this data and I thought, why can't I use this data for marketing purposes? Why can't I use this for SEO? Because people want to know the answers that are in my data. So that's how I started getting into programmatic SEO. Fast forward to fall of last year, and I really was interested in learning more about programmatic SEO. I started to notice other people doing it. I started to learn about how powerful it can be. And I thought, I really want to try this with a brand new project and just see, just apply everything I've learned to a new project and see how it goes. So I wrote a blog post about it, put it up on the internet, didn't really think much about it. It started to resonate with people a lot. So, I shared it on Twitter. It resonated with people there. Then it started ranking for the term programmatic SEO in Google, like that blog post. I think it was like third in the search results for a while. So then people started reaching out to me, asking me questions about programmatic SEO. And my experiment site that I wrote the blog post about started doing really well as well. So I just started consulting on it, basically. I started helping people implement programmatic SEO. And that's when I started to learn about a lot of the problems and questions people had around this subject. And that's eventually yeah, it is. So, and that's like what eventually led me to create Page Factory. So,
okay. First of all, can we do like a fantasy college football? That's literally the only sport I follow. I don't care about the NFL, but I've always wanted like a fantasy football, but just for college. I don't do NFL. We'll start that one day.
I bet there's something out there that exists, but
there probably is.
Yeah.
I just haven't looked yet. I figured I'd have the idea first and then go look and, see if somebody's already done it. Anyways, so let's do two things. I want to kick this discussion off with two different variations of what is programmatic SEO.
Okay.
I want to do like the 5-minute version too, but I want to give you just a second to prepare. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Allison, but to throw you under the bus. I want like the 10-second version first. So you think about that just for a second. And the reason I want to do that is, well, I'll also tell you who listens to this podcast. I probably should have done that before we started recording, but here we are. Mostly creators through and through. A lot of bloggers, a lot of SEO people, also some podcasters and YouTubers and various online serial entrepreneurs, coaches, service-based freelancers, a bunch of people, but almost all of them create content. And almost all of them know what SEO is from, I want to rank blog posts. Google, Bing. Does anybody care about Bing? I don't know. Google, Bing, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody knows what SEO is. So I've been stalling for a second to give your brain a little bit of time to catch up. I'm going to put you on the spot. What is the 10 to 20 second version of what is programmatic SEO?
Programmatic SEO is a strategy for automating content creation for SEO because creating content is a grind. You take a set of data, apply it to a template, and generate lots of landing pages at once. Kind of like mail merge, if you're looking for something to think of that's similar.
There's no way you didn't rehearse that. That was pretty good.
I have had to kind of create an elevator pitch for it, I feel. So I have used that phrasing before.
You didn't ask for this, but I'll give you a quick compliment. I finished your course yesterday. I told you that offline. And I was actually, I'm a snob, Allison. I'll just tell you this. I'm a snob when it comes to people creating courses, to be frank. And you actually did a really good job of communicating clearly and presenting well, above and beyond. I've taken a lot of courses, and I was like,
That makes me feel so good because I don't know if you saw some of my recent tweets about it. I was just struggling to get this thing out. And I was oh, this is not what I envisioned. And I mean, I just envisioned doing more, and it was just going to take too much time, I feel. So, but I'm glad you liked it.
I think you did a great job. You also did a great job with that explanation. I like the idea of mail merge. Although, do young people know what mail merge is? Us older people, I don't know how old you are, but us older people, we know what mail merge is. Taking data and transforming that into lots of content. That's kind of what I take from mail merge. Okay, Allison, let's go a little bit deeper. And I actually kind of want to just start over at the beginning, and let's do a little bit longer version of that. So I want you to take your time and really dive in deep. And I'll interrupt you with questions along the way. But what is programmatic SEO look like? Maybe that's a better way to phrase it, to go deeper.
What does it look like? I'm not really sure how to explain what it looks like, but maybe we can just kind of. Okay.
I got a better question. I should have written these down beforehand. Pro podcast repeat. If I'm going to challenge you here live on the podcast. I'm going to force you to write a make-believe blog post. The 4-step process to programmatic SEO, right?
Okay.
The big picture bullet points of here's where you start and why. Here's the next step you do and why. The 3 to 5 bullet points of what is programmatic SEO. What are those 3 to 5 steps? Maybe that's a better way to go about this.
Okay. So you want to start with 2 things, a set of data and then keywords that you can scale into many different individual keywords. So location-based searches or near me searches are always a great example of this. There are lots of different locations out there, and people tend to search the same thing about each one. So if you're looking for, the best sushi in X place, people probably search for that, or different cuisines, the best barbecue in X place. People search for those things for pretty much every place in the world, probably. Maybe mostly in America for barbecue, but sushi probably a little bit more international. So if you have a set of data with all of the sushi restaurants that are listed publicly in the world, you can generate pages for every location out there. And so you want to make sure you're targeting long tail, low competition keywords, because the content's not going to be super in depth. You're automating it. You're not spending a lot of time creating this content. You're not spending human power creating this content, so it's going to be a little light in terms of how in depth it is. But you want to start with data. You want to start with keywords at scale. And then you build a template around that. So you would build a template that's the top 10 sushi places in X place. And then you apply your data to that template, and then you publish it using a computer program to create all of those pages at once.
300 blog posts at once, theoretically, or something like that.
Yeah, usually a lot more.
Yeah. I want to underscore something you said. Best X places for Y. Variables. You actually use this term in your course, and I like to think about it that way. It helps me kind of understand what we're doing here. Taking a data set, maybe it's literally just a Google sheet with like a bajillion rows and columns about some topic. Maybe it's restaurants, maybe it's weather, something localized, or I don't know. We're going to come back to the niche selection thing because that's actually what I personally have a lot of questions about. Mm-hmm. But taking this data and then using a template, like you said, to kind of generate content using those variables. In the restaurant thing, Cadillac, Michigan would be a variable. Rome, Georgia would be a variable. And there's bajillion different, cities all across the US for barbecue and stuff like this. So I just wanted to underscore that for people. I think that's a good way to think about things, like variable. Let's go back to the early stages. Actually, I just want to talk about niche selection. Let's just go for that. We can come back to the different stuff later.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be real, and let's just no podcast, no interview style. I'm just going to tell you all my problems, Allison, and hopefully you can help me here. So I've created 60 plus websites. I have a couple of niche sites now. I've been blogging forever, and I don't really have any problems choosing a niche or niche, whatever, for a normal, I'm doing air quotes here, like normal blog, authority site, content site, niche site, whatever you want to call it. In fact, I have a list of like 75 different topics that are just like in the queue. Like I'm ready to create these sites. I don't have any problems with that. But you throw the word programmatic in front of it, and now I'm thinking about, okay, what type, I'm looking at the end game, all the 300 blog posts or more, right? What is a good niche for that? I'm thinking about data, finding the data, which I also want to come back to because you had some really good suggestions in your course on where to actually find this data. But before that, how do I validate niches for programmatic SEO? I know it's a long answer, but I want to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely like always comes back to that cornerstone of, do you have access to the data and can you find scalable keywords that you can target with that data? But I guess like when I'm thinking about it, the place I start at is, I'll just like think about different hobbies or interests I have, whatever. And I'll think like, do people ask the same question about lots of different topics around this niche? Basically, that's kind of like what you want to look for. You want to look for lots of topics or lots of things in a niche where people ask a lot of the same questions around it. So for my experiment website that I wrote that blog post about, that website is about gardening, because I realized people ask the same questions for every single possible thing you can grow in the garden. Like, how much sunlight does it need? How much water does it need? How long does it take for a seed to germinate? How tall does it get? How much fruit does it bear? And so the only problem with that site in hindsight was that I didn't have a great way to gather the data. It had to be gathered manually, which was, not really the point of like when you're trying to automate something. But that's a problem I'm trying to get over with that. But yeah, it works really good in terms of once I have the data, it's super easy to scale and it works really well.
So let me toss this at you and you tell me if this is a good idea or not. Here's what I'm thinking. If I hung up on this podcast interview in a little while and I was like, cool, I'm going to find my first programmatic SEO site, idea, niche, topic, whatever you want to call it. Think of a few general niches, hobbies you mentioned, or stuff like that. Maybe do a little bit of keyword research right there in Google or Low Fruits or Ahrefs or whatever, and try to find some questions that might have variables, quite frankly. Like look through these and say, okay, I'm wearing headphones right now, and I'm actually into headphones. That's actually one of the first things that came to my mind. I was like, what questions are people asking about headphones that could be applied towards this headphones and this IEM and this IEM? You know what IEMs are? Doesn't matter. I'm nerdy. Well, good. That's my point. Like this is a niche. There are people searching for that stuff, and it's a niche. Yeah. Does that sound like the strategy you just taught?
Yeah, that's probably where I would start. Yeah. That's probably where I would start. And then the next step would be, since you're starting kind of with like the niche first and like thinking about keywords first, like what kind of questions people are asking, the next step would be getting into the data. So it's like, where are you going to get the data for this? And then can this data be condensed into a spreadsheet, basically. It doesn't always have to be numbers, but whatever metric you were talking about, is that like a hard metric, or is that kind of more of like, I don't know, I think of noise canceling when I think of headphones, and I don't really know if there's a way to measure noise canceling, but that might be kind of hard to like talk about the noise canceling level of a headphone in a spreadsheet, unless there's a hard metric for it, unless there's like it, the Bose Quiet Comfort measured 6 points in the noise canceling scale or something like that, which is in the top 80% of most headphones in this price range or something like that. So that's the next way that's how I would transition. It's like, okay, this seems like there's something here. There's smoke, but is there fire? I guess kind of.
Could you do the opposite? Could you start with the fire? Could you go browse some data sets and ask, like, can I make a programmatic SEO site out of this?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would say probably most people out there blogging and talking about this topic, that's probably the approach that they take. They usually look for data first and then try to see if they can find keywords that match it second.
Okay. That naturally, you just segued perfectly. That was beautiful. Where can we find cool data sets? Or cool is the absolutely wrong word. Where can we find data sets that might work well for programmatic SEO sites? Or how
oh my gosh. It is a great time to look for data for any kind of use case, because we've spent the past 10 years just perfecting collecting data, basically. And there's a great culture online of just sharing data and making it public for, however people want to use it. So there are specific websites for sharing data. There's a couple of subreddits. Our data sets, I think, is one. Our data is beautiful. People always share whatever data set they got their information from for those posts. There's kaggle.com, which is a website just for sharing. Yeah, just for sharing data sets. KAGGLE.com.
Huh. Okay.
And I think datahub.io, it's one of the ones I think that's the URL for it. It was in my course. That's another website that's like Kaggle. People just like, you can use GitHub for any of the more like, technical people listening possibly might be able to find stuff on GitHub. People post a lot of data sets there. So there's a really great culture online of people just making data public. And then lots of organizations do it as well. So like the government, if you go to literally data.gov, the US government has so much data that they make public. I think it's like, I want to say it's well over 100,000 different data sets that they have public just at data.gov. And different agencies. I think that anything that an agency makes public, a federal agency makes public, gets posted there as well. Possibly your state is collecting data and making that data public. Nonprofits do the same thing. A lot of nonprofits are like collecting data and making that public for people to use. Yeah. So there's lots of places online.
I'm gonna put all these in the show notes, by the way, for anybody listening. You can just go see some of these things. Actually, I wasn't gonna do that. I was like, actually, I just make people go take your course because it's free. Maybe I'll do that instead. What was I gonna ask now? Oh, okay. Here we go. So you have your own gardening example site. Are there any other example sites people can go look to right now that are programmatic SEO driven? And again, I told you this off air, but don't out anybody who's trying to keep this private. But you did share some examples in your course where people can get a better sense of like, okay, what does this actually look like? The content. I have a data set and I automate it into content, which we'll talk about next. But do you have any example sites that people can go look at?
So yeah, there's so many large organizations out there using programmatic SEO. So one example I'm thinking of right now is Spotify. If you search for top 50 songs in the US, probably Spotify will have a page that comes up and they use metrics from their application, usage metrics, how many people listen to what and from where and whatever, to create these programmatic pages. If you search for, top indie songs in 2022, top indie songs in 2021, that's probably Spotify pages as well. So that's an example. There's a website called AllTrails, and They
Oh, right.
collect reviews on hiking trails. And they create programmatic pages. This is another location based one, but they create programmatic pages for basically any location you can think of. And, users submit feedback about trails and they create pages for, Michigan, Holland, Michigan, wherever you are, if you search hiking trails in your location, like their pages will show up.
Yeah.
And then they list, they'll tell you a little bit, they aggregate the data a little to be like, 21 people say that these hiking trails are really great for families and dogs. And 25 people said these hiking trails are easy. And then they list the different hiking trails below it. So that's another great example.
Another one you threw out in your course is levels.io. He's a guy I've been following for a while. Nomadlist.com, I think, is one of his bigger projects. And it's funny. This is a good example of I've seen programmatic sites, but didn't know they were programmatic sites. I've seen nomadlist.com for like a long time, and I've been on there several times, and it's fun to play around with, and I've gone there for several things. And you mentioned that, and I was like, whoa, wait, what? Really? Oh, yeah. And I actually did some Googling to see if his site popped up for various stuff. Like, I can't even remember what I searched, but it was something like internet speeds in New Delhi or something like that for digital nomads or for remote workers or something. And sure enough, his site popped up and that was in the URL. And I was like, yeah, now it makes sense. This was not generated by Levels sitting at his blog and like writing this post. It's all from the data that he's collected over the years from Nomadlist. I just thought that was cool that like, oh, I know this site. Oh, of course it's a programmatic SEO site. I'd never thought about it that way. So that was
Yeah. Yeah, Nomadlist is a popular example that people really like to point to.
Yep. It's a great website. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm trying to think. I think I want to skip to implementation here. Yeah, let's do that for sake of time. So let me recap. Not for you and not for anybody listening, but just for my own brain. So I like the idea of starting with the data, starting with the fire before the smoke. I think that might actually be better for me personally. By the way, I didn't tell you this off air, but since I've taken your course, I'm going to do this now. Like one of my next projects in early 2023, I have one more niche site I need to get off the ground. And then I'm coming back here in a couple of months and I'm going all in on this for a site just to see what happens as an experiment. I'm excited. So thank you for all you've done. What was I going to say? Oh, data first. I like that idea. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have any ideas in my head right now. I'll probably have to sit down, do a little bit of brainstorming, and then go search through. I Like Data is Beautiful. It's one of my favorite subreddits. I might go pull up like the top posts. I'll sort by like top posts in the past year and like see what some of those are maybe, and hopefully get some ideas. Download the data. So what's the next step in implementation? Even before creating a template, is there like a really certain format we need to download in terms of the data, Excel or Google Sheets, or is there anything else we need to do before we actually create a blog post template? Does that make sense? Like, is there a step I'm missing?
So you want to do a little keyword research, and keyword research compared with programmatic SEO compared to traditional SEO is definitely lighter. It's more about validating like what questions are people asking around this topic. And, you just want to gather as many keywords as possible because you want to use your keywords to build your template basically. So that's like the transitionary. So I have found keywords and I have found data that I can use to target those keywords. And then it's like plucking out the right keywords to build a template around.
And you say light, meaning I'm not about to individually research these 1,000 keyword ideas. Maybe I choose like a subset of those and I'm mostly like figuring out what else do I need to put in the content template. Does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, that would be that step I was missing in that little scenario. Okay, so let's say you do that. Let's say you have some great long tail ideas, templates. You just literally write a blog post, like the first one, start to finish?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. It's going to be a different kind of blog post than if you're a traditional SEO. it's going to be different than probably what you've done before. Again, it's going to be lighter. It's not going to be as in depth. But yeah, you just sort of like write a little article about answering the questions in these keywords, right? Like it's really just like, that's why you want to pick out like a good group of keywords to target. Maybe for some searches, like if you're targeting something like the best sushi in Billings, Montana, or something like that, if you're targeting like the best sushi in X location, that you're probably really only just targeting one or two keywords for that, maybe just one keyword. But like for my gardening website that I created, I was targeting a good, I want to say 7 to 10 keywords per page, because it was how much water does the plant need? How much water does X plant need? How much sunlight does X plant need? When to plant X plant? How long until X seeds germinate? That kind of stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Let's address the elephant in the room: thin content and duplicate content. I'm assuming this is right up there in the category of people asking you questions about things. I feel like, as somebody who has preached for a long time, like, create the best piece of article on the internet, and like, it has to be thorough and search intent and all this stuff. Does Google care that much about duplicate content and thin content, and how do you get around that, if so? You know what I mean? Like, I know people are going to be thinking these thoughts.
Oh, for sure. Those are like the two things that people are. It's so funny. I'd have so many people reach out to me about how like they were so desperate to do programmatic SEO, but then they were like so worried about duplicate content. Like it is a fear keeping people up at night, is what I've learned. And,
For sure.
So I'll address the thin content stuff first. You can create quality content with programmatic SEO. And that's like what you should be doing. It's about serving the users and answering their questions. And, the quality of the pages you create is really reliant on what kind of data you have. If you have quality data, then you can create quality content because the answers are in the data, basically. So avoiding thin content, having pages that don't answer the user's question very well, or just like don't have a lot of like text on the page, I always suggest solving that problem by just targeting more keywords. Like that's how, and like making sure they're obviously keywords that are like related, So like the programmatic pages I created for the gardening website were how to grow X guides. And, I included all the basic information you need to know, like when should you plant it? How tolerant is it of frost? Like, what kind of pot should you plant it in? How much water does it need? How much sunlight does it need? That kind of stuff. So it's, it's like there's definitely probably more in-depth articles out there about how to grow tomatoes. But for my one article, I have an article on how to grow banana peppers, and it like ranks in the top 3 search results against like even human written stuff, just because like the human written stuff is like kind of garbage. And my page, and my page, like, gets them the answers that people need in and out real quick.
Can I rant for a second?
Oh, absolutely.
Why did I just ask you that? It's my podcast. I get to rant if I want to. Oh my gosh. What you just said about answering the question quickly, or whatever you literally just said. This is always a rant of mine as well. 5 to 10 years ago, especially, if you talk to bloggers and specifically SEO bloggers, more words, right? Word counts. That's what they care about at the moment. Word counts. 10,000 words, 12,000, 15,000 words, not enough. Got to add more. That's what makes a quality piece of content in Google. And then at some point along the line, thankfully, we started transitioning to search intent. And something I really like that you said in your course, especially, I think you even said it just a little while ago, is programmatic SEO content can absolutely conquer search intent. Like it could be the thing, right? I really like that. It's not necessarily 10,000 words that you need to create on this. In fact, like you just mentioned, some of your competitors, they might be fluffing that article out. And it might be not serving users as well as something that is 700 words as opposed to 1,300, for example.
Yeah.
So there's my rant. I would love all creators listening to sound of my voice right now to think about search intent and user intent and what somebody actually needs and wants when they land on a page, first and foremost above anything else. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess like the other thing I'll point out too is that programmatic SEO isn't a means to compete with human written content. That's something that people always get confused with as well. It's like, well, how could this beat like, a human writing like this, in-depth analysis, whatever. And it's not. With programmatic SEO, you're targeting searches that no one has the time to write for. Like if you search for any kind of nutritional information, no one, unless it's, I don't know, maybe something super generic like a Big Mac or an apple or something like that. Like no one's writing these like super in-depth articles about it. If you search for, how many calories or how many carbs are in Diet Gatorade, like you're going to get an automated page. You're going to get a programmatic SEO page for that because, no one has the time. There's billions of food and drink items out there, and no one has the time to write in-depth analysis about all of those items. And, you don't need to. You really just need to get your number and then get out.
Yep.
So that's my little thing that I want to highlight.
I like that. I like that mostly as an argument to people who look at this as some form of cheating or something that it's not. Because I do feel like people have that perception.
Yes,
especially when you use the word like automate and scale and 1,000 blog posts, people are like, whoa, no ma'am. Like, I like that you said that.
Yeah, it's not, there are people who use it to create spammy junk content, but there are people who write spammy junk content too, like that's just kind of like, exactly. That's just kind of like, SEO is a bit of a game and people try to game the system. So, but with programmatic SEO, like it's just like regular SEO. It's about serving the users the best you can, and then you'll do well with it. So to transition, I'll start talking about duplicate content then.
Awesome.
Duplicate content is something that people are always worried about. And I don't really know how else to explain it except that like Google doesn't really care about duplicate content in the way that people think they do. And I don't know where this comes from, where this fear comes from. I think it comes from a lot of these like plagiarism tools potentially, where there's like all these tools out there that are like, you got to worry. They've like manufactured this fear potentially about like, oh, you got to worry about plagiarism on your site. First of all, I don't know how you can plagiarize yourself. It kind of makes sense if you're like copying content from other sites, but if it's like all content on your site, I don't know how you're really plagiarizing yourself. But also Google expects there to be duplicate content on every web page. That's what a header and a footer or a sidebar are. So it expects some level of duplicate content. And better yet, Google cares more about the intent of a page than it does how much percentage of text there is between two pages that is similar. It can understand that there might be pages where 90% of the text is similar, but they have two different purposes. It can understand that the sign up page is different than the login page, even though those pages are almost exactly the same. And the same can be done with programmatic SEO. Google can understand that, the options for, I don't know I'm trying to think of an example, or like the town next to you probably shares all the same hiking trails as the town that you're currently in. But if someone searches for, the hiking trails in your town, they want to see stuff that's like within 5 miles. And maybe there's one hiking trail that, isn't in that, but that would show up in the search results for the town next to you. Those two pages that are created will be almost the same, but Google can understand that they're technically different. Yep. I guess is the point I'm trying to get across.
Yeah. I will also point people to my podcast interview with Mike. I cannot remember his last name. It's actually probably going to drive me crazy at this point. Niche Down on Twitter, or at least that used to be his handle or whatnot. He and his brother had coined the term brand swapping, which is fancy, but really that's just a way to do kind of sort of programmatic SEO for even without automating anything. And one example he gives is, well, I'll just use headphones. How about that? How to repair blank headphone or XYZ headphones diaphragm or something, right? And you could insert fill in the blank headphone brand, Sony, Audio Technica, like there's like 100 different like high-end headphones that people are searching for how to repair XYZ brand. And that piece of content is like 90% the same. Like a lot of the instructions to repair this headphone is similar to this other headphone. Maybe a few details need to be changed, but you can honestly turn that into multiple posts. And I've actually done that with my niche site. It's not headphones. And it's worked really well.
Yeah.
I've seen zero Google penalties.
And some people might say, well, those should just be consolidated into one article. And it's like, okay, maybe in a perfect world, but that's not what SEO is. SEO is like you're trying to like get your page in front of like the most like niche questions people are asking about it. So it's okay to split them up into different pages as long as the information is accurate.
Yeah. And one thing I do in my own little brand swapping post is point people to customer support for each brand. And that's just an extra helpful little thing that helps with then content. And if that was all in one post, like nobody would care, right? If I just listed a directory of like 50 headphones, I was like, click here for this site or this site or this site. Like that's wasted content. That's not user intent like at all. So I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. There you
go. So that's my little rant on duplicate content.
Oh, I will also. So I haven't played around with this feature of Page Factory yet, because I actually didn't know it existed until I took the course. But you can also, and you tell me what I'm missing here. You can also do like if-then scenarios for content, right? To make it even more, to make it automated with data, but make it even more different than on like a paragraph by paragraph basis. Again, I haven't played around with the feature, but I've heard you could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can do stuff like, you're doing headphones, and if it's a Bose, you can do something in Page Factory that's like, hey, if this is a Bose headphone, then put this little blurb about how put my blurb about my Bose affiliate link here, like that kind of stuff, and if it's not a Bose headphone, then don't put that little blurb there. That's like, what you're talking about basically.
Yep.
I have a lot of plans for doing more stuff like that, being able to like mix and match data in the spreadsheet and being able to include and exclude and like change up the text and stuff like that. It's just a lot of work ahead of me, but hopefully this winter I get to crank out more stuff like that.
Okay. That's fair enough. All right. So let's wind down here. Feel free to promote Page Factory in this next question, but implementation. So let's say somebody has spent the time maybe in a Google Doc to write their template, and they have some placeholders for variables and different stuff like that. How do we now turn that? How do we do the mail merge, right? How do we turn this spreadsheet with a bajillion rows using this template into 1,000 WordPress blog posts? Does that make sense? And again,
yes.
Feel free to promote Page Factory because there's not a whole lot of tools that do this, to my knowledge.
Me either, which is why I ended up creating Page Factory, actually. So this was the problem that people kept running into when I was like consulting for them. It always ended up me being like, hey, if you want to do that, you either have to hire me as a software developer to build a custom template on your website to do this, or you're going to have to find a developer somewhere else. It always ended up, and that's why it's called programmatic SEO, because for the longest time, it was people hiring software developers to program templates into websites to create these pages programmatically. So this is implementation is what Page Factory does. So Page Factory is a tool that lets you upload a spreadsheet, create a template, and then publish pages in bulk to your website. It integrates
WordPress, right?
Yeah, it integrates directly with WordPress and Webflow right now. So you can publish pages directly to those kinds of websites. And then if you have a website on a different platform, you can download the pages and you'll have to copy and paste them over that way. But I'm working on more integrations right now.
Okay. Does it download just as a text file? I'm just curious.
The download can be in any kind of file you want. So like my pages for my gardening website, I use a static site generator called Hugo to create that website. So I generate pages in Markdown, and then it's awesome. Like I just like take the folder and I put it in the folder for the website, and I just upload the whole thing, and then it just like, yeah, it just works. So yeah.
I am of the personal opinion that the entire website or the entire internet, the entire internet should support Markdown whenever I'm writing. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Everybody should learn Markdown. Who doesn't know it already? Okay. Well, is that it? I'm pretty sure that's it. Okay. What about, last thing I wrote down in my notes here. So besides Page Factory and besides the data sites that you mentioned that might have collections of data sets, are there any other tools that you can think of? Keyword research tools, let's ignore those. We've talked about that a billion times on this podcast for sure. Is there anything we missed in terms of stuff that could be helpful? Does that make sense?
Definitely Excel or Google Sheets. That seems like probably kind of basic right now, but I would say something that people don't realize a lot of the times, if you're going the route of starting with a data set, is that you're going to probably have to manipulate the data a little bit to match user search intent. So a lot of times, like a raw data set just doesn't match up with user search intent perfectly. Like you might have to analyze the data a little to match the user search intent. So you might have to get a little handy. I mean, sometimes you do find stuff that's like perfectly, it's like, oh, a giant, like nutritional information is a great example. Like, you just need, I have found a giant data set of like all of these food and drink items. Like, people just want to know the calories and the protein or whatever, and that's all right there. But sometimes like you kind of need to analyze stuff. So I would say you might need to get a little handy with some spreadsheet tools and analyzing data to be able to aggregate it and manipulate it as you need to.
Sure.
And as far
as well.
And
format as well.
And a little formatting, yes, yeah. That can always help too. Okay. As far as other tools, I don't know. It's yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered it. I just rattled off some as I asked the question. I was like, that seems pretty comprehensive. All right. Well, Allison, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show, but also just doing what you do. I think it's really cool and helpful. And you've obviously invested a lot into building Page Factory, which I think is awesome. So other than that, or not even other than that, but where would you point people to follow you, but also learn more, get the free course, that sort of stuff?
Mm-hmm. So I've always been building in public and sharing stuff on Twitter. My handle is Allison_Seboldt. And then I also blog and share all of my like stats, revenue, experiments, stuff like that on my personal blog. And that's AllisonSeboldt.com. If you want to check out Page Factory, that's pagefactory.app.
Okay. And there's a link to the course at pagefactory.app.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Free course or a donation-based course as well, which I thought was really cool. Well done. Allison, thanks for coming on. This has been a delight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.